The Place of Poetry in Life by Charles Francis Richardson. From The World's Best Poetry, Volume 6, Fancy and Sentiment, Part 1. This is a LibriVox recording. All LibriVox recordings are in the public domain. For more information, or to volunteer, please visit LibriVox.org. Recording by Thomas Peter,
Sonia,
Craig Franklin,
Lian Yao,
and Jason in Panama.
The Place of Poetry in Life. Beauty, sooner or later, comes to its own, but no man perceives it all at once. Even the undying poetry of the world around us must be brought to the notice of growing minds. It is no wonder, then, that a taste for poetry and literature is often undeveloped. Some people read a great deal of poetry, with constant zest and unfailing advantage. Others, though they may be great readers of other classes of literature, find little pleasure or profit in poetry. Is it a duty to read poetry? Should those who seem to have no natural taste for it endeavour to cultivate a taste? Or should they rest content with the conclusion that certain minds appreciate, and profit by, poetical compositions, while other minds have no capacity for their enjoyment? It may not be a downright duty to like poetry, or to try to like it, but certainly it is a misfortune that so large and lovely a division of the world's literature should be lost to any reader. The absence of a poetic taste is a sad indication of a lack of the imaginative faculty, and without imagination, what is life? If a reader finds that the ideal has little or no place in his intellectual existence, or in his daily processes of thought and feeling, then he should consider with all soberness the fact that a God-given power is slipping away from him, a power without which his best faculties must become atrophied, without which he loses the greater part of the enjoyment of life, day by day, without which, in very truth, he cannot see all the glory of the open door of the kingdom of heaven. Children are poets. They find fairyland in a poor broken set of toy crockery, or in a ragged company of broken-nosed dolls. Their powers of imagination ought never to be lost in the humdrum affairs of a workaday world. Their habit of discovering the ideal in the real is one which cannot be laid aside without great detriment to the individual life and character. There may, then, be persons who have no capacity for poetry, and who cannot cultivate a taste for it. But this inability, if real, is to be mourned as a mental blindness and deafness, shutting out the greater part of the universe from sight and hearing, for the most real things in the world are those that neither men nor children can see. There is, of course, a great deal of nobly imaginative literature which is not poetry, in the technical sense, but if one can read Hawthorne or the Waverley novels with pleasure, he is quite sure to find no stumbling block in Ulalume or The Lady of the Lake. It is the poetic spirit that we should recognize and take to our hearts, whatever may be the outward form in which it may be enshrined. Poetry, said Poe, is the rhythmical creation of beauty. That is, it is one of many ways of expressing in permanently beautiful form man's ideas of what he has seen or imagined. No other division of creative art possesses such universality, such intelligibility, as does this art of song. The beginning of the love of poetry lies in the individual mind. For its development, one must seek his material from the treasures around him, and must work out his methods of utilizing that material with the same care that he applies to other departments of intellectual exercise. Let him, if he finds his taste in need of cultivation, begin with such poems as he likes. Read them more than once. Learn their teachings. Apprehend their inner spirit and purpose. Whatever the beginning, it is sure to lead to something better, if the reader will but resolutely determine to know what the writer meant to say, to see the picture that he portrayed, and to share his enthusiasm and warmth of feeling. This cultivation of the intelligence is essential to the highest success even in daily drudgery, in politics, and in the commercial business of the world. No one is too dull or too prosaic or too much absorbed in the routine of practical life to be absolved from the care of his imaginative powers, and no one is likely to find that this care will not repay him even in a practical sense. It is the old alternative of eyes and no eyes. He who thinks wisely, he who perceives quickly that which others do not see at all, is better equipped for any work than one whose mind works slowly and feebly, and whose apprehensions have grown rusty from disuse. Poetry is not for the few, but for the many, for all. The world's greatest poems, with few exceptions, have been poems whose meaning has been perfectly clear, and whose language has been simple. Poems which have addressed themselves to the direct intelligence of men. Homer and Chaucer and Shakespeare need no mystical commentary to explain their meaning. Like Mark Antony, they only speak right on. If a poem is obscure, after a reasonably intelligent reading, you may know by that mark alone that it is not worth your while to vex your brain over it. If a poet has not made himself clear, it is his fault and not yours, if you are a person of intellectual capacity. Sunlight, air, water, these are not for the few, nor is poetry to be cooped and confined any more than these. True poetry has a far nobler mission than to puzzle or to amuse or even to excite. It is the voice of all that is best in humanity, speaking from man to man. Not all of us can thus speak, but we can hear, and incorporate the poetic spirit in our best and fullest life, day by day.
What is that spirit? Many have been the attempts to define it, but, after all, we can only say in the words of Shelley, "All feel, yet see thee never." Or again, is not poetry to be described, as nearly as we can describe it, in two more lines from the same fine song of the voice in the air? Lamp of earth, wherever thou movest, its dim shapes are clad with brightness. Matter is ruled by mind, and the best power of mind is sentiment. The kingdom of God, said the founder of the Christian religion, is within you. It is the mission of poetry, by means of noble words in fit metrical forms, to show to man the supernal beauty of the world of things and thought and action, and to lead him therewith to broaden his own life and other lives in the eternal upward march. Let us turn, for an illustration of the place of sentiment in the intellectual life, to the heart of that great quickening movement in the world's history which we call the Renaissance, or New Birth. Of all the cities in the world, none is so rich as Florence in memorials of mind. As one stands beneath the magisterial pinnacle of the Palazzo Vecchio, beholds the unrivalled proportions of Brunelleschi's dome, marks the serious yet cheerful unity of Giotto's tower, studies the stories of the bronze gates of the baptistry, reads the mortuary inscriptions in the somewhat monotonous nave of the church of Santa Croce, bears his head in the cell of Savonarola, springs heavenward with the thought and the vision of Fra Angelico's angels, is touched with the humanity of Andrea del Sarto's tenderly sweet Madonna on the frescoed wall, or roams through the incomparable riches of the Uffizi and the Pitti, the glory of the City of Flowers seems an epitome of all that man has ever done or dreamed. On the steps of Santa Maria Novella, Boccaccio's gay refugees, in all the lust of life, stood preparing their flight from the plague-smitten town. Through Florentine streets walked Petrarch with the soul of Laura imprisoned in his heart, and in the shade of the cathedral is still shown that Sasso di Dante, where sat the greatest poet of medieval Europe, as he gazed with sad eyes on the men and women and children passing by. And all these towers and domes, these narrow streets and unspacious squares, these rich treasures of church and convent and gallery, make up the Florence of power, power displayed in the loves and hates 500 years agone. Indeed, if all these treasures of the Florentine past were to perish save one alone, though the many lights dwindle to one light, there is help if the heaven has one. If only a single picture in a single art gallery remained, it would still tell us, if that picture were the Primavera of Botticelli, what it was that informed this strange city of the past and made poem, palace, dome, tower, gate, cell, fagot, angel, Madonna, and tribuna the things they were and are. On a westward wall of the Academy of Fine Arts, one of the lesser galleries of prodigal Florence, hangs what the guide-books call an allegorical representation of spring, on the left Mercury and the Graces, Venus in the middle, and on the right Flora, with a personification of fertility and the god of wind. Possibly so, perhaps, as others think, an allegory of the four seasons. But surely the first great picture in which there was the unmistakable and perennial glory of pure imagination amid the conventional mythology or hagiology of the time. With this picture before him, one exclaims with Dante, Incipit vita nova. Here indeed is an epitome of the Renaissance, as Florence is an epitome of the medieval world. Life, after all, these lovely figures seem to say, is a poor and cruel thing without beauty of doing and of being. Nor can beauty really be without the heart that makes, the sentiment that shapes and consecrates. And the poet or the painter in our age, as in Botticelli's, is he who puts these lessons of the beautiful before the ears and eyes of man. We usually, says Ruskin, fall into much error by considering the intellectual powers as having dignity in themselves and separable from the heart, whereas the truth is that the intellect becomes noble and ignoble according to the food we give it, and the kind of subjects with which it is conversant. So we relearn an old lesson from an old text. The opening years of the 20th century are in some ways strikingly similar to the beginning of the 18th. The reigns of the Georges in our motherland were a period of rationalism. The first years of Edward's rule are a time of materialism, in which the ancient truths of art and righteousness must be restated for an engineering age. Feeling can never die while man lives, nor can art cease to strive to portray what man has seen or dreamed. But in the history of the world, a period of imagination is ever followed by a time of criticism and comment, or perhaps dull negation. After Shakespeare and Spenser and Milton came Pope and Johnson and the echoes of Voltaire. After Scott and Tennyson, Spenser and Huxley. Just 100 years ago appeared the lyrical ballads of Wordsworth and Coleridge, that new world of romantic poetry, and thus genius is ever reincarnated from time to time. The new man must ever and anon be summoned forth by the new prophet. The poet must cry out in the arid waste of a mere life that is not true living. A time of national expansion is the very time for us to exclaim anew that we are children of ideas, and that ideas are born of sentiment.
When a scientist declares that literature is a frill which ought not to have any place in a modern college curriculum, so crowded with scientific and really useful studies, there is need to go back to Botticelli for a fresh start and a little elementary instruction. For today, as in his picture, the cold north wind is cruelly blowing upon the gaysome-hearted spirit of creative beauty, and clutching her with his freezing fingers. He who despises or deems superfluous in a practical age the frills of Dante or Tennyson, should read for his reproof and instruction in righteousness such wise words as those lately spoken by an American who stood alike for letters and for right living. Commonly, a man is said to be practical who looks out keenly for his own interests and succeeds in getting possession of much property. He may do this by industry and thrift, or he may do it by taking advantage of the weakness of his fellows. In either case, success entitles him to the reputation of being practical. Or a man may be entitled to this epithet if he concerns himself only with material things, and if the product of his effort is strictly utilitarian. In short, a man is practical if he gets what he wants and keeps it. This is a low view of life, and wholly leaves out of consideration the most important part of it. The true and broad meaning of practical is a wise adaptation of means to the end in view, and the end in view is an essential part of the practicality. A man who succeeds in making a good sonnet is as practical as a man who manufactures a good wheelbarrow. A perfect sonnet is rare. All the ages have produced only a few, some say not 100 altogether. Yet a little group of Shakespeare's is of more value, has been of more use to mankind than the millions of wheelbarrows. Yet the world could get on without sonnets, and it could not dispense with wheelbarrows. Yes, but that depends upon your idea of the world. To me, a world constructed wholly on the wheelbarrow plan would be intolerable. It is bad enough with the sonnets mixed in. In the progress of the world, whether in republic or in monarchy, the few lead and the many are led, often very slowly and imperfectly. The old lessons must be taught anew to every generation. It is not enough to say that progress is in the air. We must define progress with accuracy and promote it with patience as well as zeal. Patriotism, liberty, religion, duty, art, these may be in the air indeed. It is our business to put them into men's souls and lives. Philosophy is the guide of life, but philosophy is more than wisdom. It is the love of wisdom, and love is sentiment. It was sentiment that dominated the work of Jesus and Paul in founding Christian ethics upon the basis of love. The ministry today is service, and service of every sort must be consecrated by feeling for the served. The man of medicine, from Sir Thomas Browne and his Christian morals to John Brown and his Rab and his friends, may become, and sometimes has become, even more than his fellow worker from the divinity school, a messenger of intimate good to the individual and the home. American politics and civics would have been poor indeed without the sentiment that shaped the constructive order of our constitutions and laws. Jefferson, with all his varied practicalities, was an idealist, and even in the cool papers composing the Federalist there runs, as through the ages, one increasing purpose that is often a passion. Jefferson, in his first inaugural, spoke of that harmony and affection without which liberty and life itself are but dreary things. And Hamilton, in the opening lines of the first of the Federalist papers, made haste to claim that the settlement of the Union would add the inducements of philanthropy to those of patriotism. Thus the leader in any field is he who, as in the Greek torch race, holds in his hand a burning fire and transmits it to others. In order to perceive to the full, the intellect must apprehend the wish as well as the fact. Still more is such perception demanded of him who would portray. Said Dryden of Shakespeare, when he describes anything, you more than see it, you feel it too. That is why Dumas declared that the greatest of Elizabethans has gone to the bottom of everything, divined everything, said everything. There can be no divination without sympathy between the seer, and the poet is a seer in a double sense, and the seen. Hard and narrow is Dryden's famous 3 poets in 3 distant ages born, Greece, Italy, and England did adorn. The first in loftiness of thought surpassed, the next in majesty, in both the last. The force of nature could no further go to make a third, she joined the former two. Dryden did not see, or did not say, that a certain lack of sympathy, of sentiment in a way sets Milton below Chaucer or Shakespeare.
So much of art depends upon portrayal in painting, sculpture, music, words, that too much emphasis can hardly be put upon this truth. It is the business of intellectual leadership, especially in every form of art, to unfold or to interpret what men have missed or but half understood, in life or in its background of the natural world. Art, averred Coleridge, cannot exist without or apart from nature. And what has man of his own to give to his fellow men but his own thoughts and feelings, and his observations, as far as they are modified by his own thoughts or feelings? So Ruskin. The grandest aim of imaginative art is to give men noble grounds for noble emotion. We move in a circle, or rather, we receive and give. Sympathy and sentiment perceive, art interprets, and the receiver of the artist's gift transmits that gift to others. If there is a motion and a spirit which impels all thinking things, all objects of all thought, and roars through all things, that spirit is assuredly something more than hard intellectuality. Intellect, after all, is human and mortal. Soul is divine and eternal. Never in my life did this sense of the verities of the universe and the triumph of life over death come nearer to my mind than when once I stood on that hillock in Concord's Sleepy Hollow Cemetery, where rest, almost side by side, Hawthorne and Emerson, with the Alcotts and Thoreau not far away. From their graves, the spirits of our first writer and of our chief philosopher of optimism rise to tell us that we too have our Westminster Abbeys and St. Paul's, though overhanging branches replace upspringing arches of stone, and the dome of the blue vault is substituted for that which Christopher Wren upreared. When such dust was laid in Mother Earth, men said not, "Death adds him to his land, a lump of mould the more," but instead, "Now our soul is consecrated, and made part of the universe of mind as well as of matter." The restless sea resounds along the shore, the light land breeze flows outward with a sigh, and each to each seems chanting evermore a mournful memory of days gone by. Here, where they lived, all holy thoughts revive, of patient striving and of faith held fast. Here, where they died, their buried records live. Silent, they speak from out the shadowy past. Shelley, I suppose, represented more than any poet of his time a sort of ethereal mentality in the nature of his imaginative genius. Yet it was he who said, in his Defence of Poetry, "The great instrument of moral good is imagination." What were virtue, love, patriotism, friendship? What were the scenery of this beautiful universe which we inhabit? What were our consolations on this side of the grave? And what were our aspirations beyond it, if poetry did not descend to bring light and fire from those eternal regions where the owl-winged faculty of calculation dare not ever soar? Andrew Lang had the same thought in mind when he declared that Coleridge is, or may be reckoned, a great poet, because every now and again he captures in verse that indefinable emotion which is less articulately expressed in music, and in some unutterable way he transports us into the world of dream and desire. This is a very vague fashion of saying what hardly permits itself to be said. We might put it that Coleridge has, on occasion, the power to move us, as we are moved by the most rarely beautiful cosmic effects of magic lights and shadows, by the silver on lakes for a chosen moment in the dawn or twilight, by the fragrant deeps of dewy forests, by sudden, infrequent passions of heart and memory, and by unexpected potencies of imagination. Pitifully did Shelley and Coleridge, not less than Milton himself, fall short of Milton's declaration that he who would not be frustrate of his hope to write well hereafter in laudable things ought himself to be a true poem. Literary men are as human as other folks, and a little more so. But sometimes the stream appears to rise higher than its source, because we do not really know what the artist's highest level is. An artist's creations are the best test of his nature. When we do not know all the facts of a man's life, and how seldom we know even half of them, it is dangerous to make what facts we do know overbear the evidence of his works. An author's book or a painter's picture, we may say, represents both the is and the would be. And can there be an ideal without aspiration? Benvenuto Cellini was, as he has lately been characterized, a scoundrel. But his Perseus did not come from the scoundrelly part of him. Many of the great artists of the world have been moral weaklings, while some of its noblest souls have lacked not only the creative power, but any apparent sense of appreciation of beautiful things made. But art consecrated by ethics is that which produces a Divina Commedia out of the experiences and ideas of what otherwise would be a mere comédie humaine. The poet, or other artist, is he who scans life and nature, and presents them to us in significant and enduring forms. He stands for what all mankind half hopes to be, and he is directly successful in proportion to his representative power. Ill-regulated superficiality is fatal to the artist, and therefore to the leader, and we ought all to be leaders of something, if only of ourselves. The ruler, the director, must correlate many things. His is the breadth of life. If he finds that honesty is the best policy, he also perceives that he is not an honest man who is honest for this reason. To him, at his best, belongs what Theodore Watts Danton calls Tennyson's, that is to say, any great poet's, instinct for confronting the universe as a whole. And in the presence of the universe, he solemnly says, with the possessor of one of the greatest of American fortunes, "How foolish to speak of money and fortune as synonymous, that the poorest man I know is the man who has nothing but money."
The poet beholds and interprets. In the great book of nature and life he reads, and from 1,000 texts unfolds to humanity the perennial beauty and the divine lessons of the universe. He learns by insight what others miss in the slow processes of external investigation. For him nature is the mirror of God and the mentor of man. As naturally as a mountain brook he sings because he must. He studies the whole created universe, and finds God in the bush as well as in the libraries. American literature furnishes in the case of Longfellow, whom it is now the fashion to decry, a pleasant illustration of the way in which the poet may combine many things for the benefit of his time. He was a college teacher, but no pedant; a textbook maker, but also a singer; an adapter, but not, as Poe called him, a plagiarist; an early follower of Heine, but at last the creator of two of our most characteristically American books, in story and in form, the scholarly student and translator of Dante, but likewise the simple singer of Excelsior and A Psalm of Life. In a sentimental time he knew how to use and to better the fashions of his day, and in the crude and crass period of American isms and ologies he helped us because he was both sympathetic and wise. The time spirit, as far as it affects the intellectual life of a people, is simply the intelligence of man dominated by a high purpose. The countrymen of Franklin, Washington, Jefferson, and Webster do not need to be reminded that the brain is the servant of the soul, not less in politics than in art. The history of the United States is the history of the evolution of ideas. Evolution is in one sense inexorable, in another and far truer sense it is the sum total of our own use of the powers and means at hand which we have inherited or earned. Sentiment is worthless unless transmuted into character, and character demands action. We are ourselves results, we must likewise be causes. If the 19th and 18th and 17th centuries have been in some ways good, the 20th ought to be best of all. The past explains the present, and the present the past. We may interpret the coming century by its predecessors, for, however great its changes may be, from our followers there surely will not depart the quickening spirit of their Aryan ancestors, especially of the Teutonic branch. Though the future be in a true sense an unknown world, with its potencies of material and spiritual development, for the child is the son of the centuries, and in truth an Emerson or a Browning can peer beyond the horizon of a Shakespeare, still the verities of human nature can never be lost. We may be living in a literary or artistic interregnum, but the stuff of literature is ever at hand of that silent literature which is, as it were, the background of the literature which is written. First the deed, then its eidolon. Not one of the twice 400 men who went down with Kempenfelt could have written Toll for the Brave, but a great act, and one supposes that they died with courage, is not far in essence from a great creation. Surely as the century begins one sees the heroic on every hand. Men were never braver than today, sometimes with a bravery which is glorified by a self-sacrifice all the truer because it is not reckless. We occasionally speak of our own days, days of brief wars and of the better victories of peaceful education, as though they were late finalities. Who knows but we ourselves are living in the earliest ages of the ancient earth? This is the first period in which social decency has been attained even in any moderate degree, the first in which men have travelled by steam, talked by electricity, multiplied cheap books, relieved the handicraftsman of much of his weary toil, brought fresh food from the ends of the earth for eaters who find it cheaper to buy than to produce. In mechanics we may well be modest so long as man cannot, unaided, fly a 10-foot distance 10 inches above the surface of the earth which gave him birth, while in philosophy we have not one glimmer of real knowledge concerning the creating cause or actual character of time, space, matter, life, nor can we tell, any more than the kitten at our feet or the housefly on the ceiling, the connection between the end of a thought and the end of a nerve. The truth is, wrote John Addington Symonds, that in many senses we are still in mid-Renaissance. The evolution has not been completed. The life is our own and is progressive. As in the transformation scene of some great masque, so here the waning and the waxing shapes are mingled, the new forms, at first shadowy and filmy, gain upon the old, and now both blend, and now the old scene fades into the background. Still, who shall say whether the new scene be finally set up? The poet therefore is now and must forever be the searcher for ultimate truth. Happier to chase a flying goal than to sit counting laureled gains, to guess the soul within the soul than to be the lord of what remains. Hide still best good in subtle wise, beyond my nature's utmost scope, be ever absent from mine eyes, to be twice present in my hope. The one thing which distinguishes the leader from the led is the vision behind the mist. The poet, as Plato told us long ago, has many functions. His it is to teach and enlighten the state, to make life beautiful, and to draw the soul insensibly into harmony with reason. But among them all, none assuredly is greater than the mission which he has received from heaven, to keep alive the senses of a world that is out of sight, and to show how the troubled waves of human life may dimly reflect the beauty and mystery of God. Charles Francis Richardson. End of The Place of Poetry in Life by Charles Francis Richardson. This recording is in the public domain.
Fantasy. From The Vision of Delight by Ben Jonson. From The World's Best Poetry, Volume 6, Fancy and Sentiment, Part 1. Read for LibriVox.org by Lianne Yao. Fantasy. Break, fantasy, from thy cave of cloud, and spread thy purple wings. Now all thy figures are allowed, and various shapes of things. Create of airy forms a stream, it must have blood, and naught of phlegm. And though it be a waking dream, yet let it like an odour rise to all the senses here, and fall like sleep upon their eyes, or music in their ear. End of poem. This recording is in the public domain.
Hello, My Fancy, by William Cleland, from the World's Best Poetry, Volume 6, Fancy and Sentiment, Part 1. Read for LibriVox.org by Thomas Peter. Hello, my fancy. In melancholic fancy, out of myself, in the Vulcan dancy, all the world surveying, nowhere staying, just like a fairy elf, out o'er the tops of highest mountains skipping, out o'er the hills, the trees and valleys tripping, out o'er the ocean seas, without an oar or shipping. Hallo, my fancy, whither wilt thou go? Amidst the misty vapours, fain would I know what doth cause the tapers, why the clouds benight us, and affright us, while we travel here below. Fain would I know what makes the roaring thunder, and what these lightnings be that rend the clouds asunder, and what these comets are on which we gaze and wonder. Hallo, my fancy, whither wilt thou go? Fain would I know the reason why the little ant all the summer season layeth up provision, on condition to know no winter's want, and how these little fishes that swim beneath salt water do never blind their eyes. Methinks it is a matter an inch above the reach of old Pater. Hallo, my fancy, whither wilt thou go? Fain would I be resolved how things are done, and where the bull was calved of bloody Phalaris, and where the tailor is that works to the man i' the moon. Fain would I know how Cupid aims so rightly, and how these little fairies do dance and leap so lightly, and where fair Cynthia makes her ambles nightly. Hallo, my fancy, whither wilt thou go? In conceit, like Phaeton, I'll mount Phoebus' chair, having ne'er a hat on, all my hair a-burning in my journeying, hurrying through the air. Fain would I hear his fiery horses neighing, and see how they on foamy bits are playing. All the stars and planets I will be surveying. Hallo, my fancy, whither wilt thou go? Oh, from what ground of nature doth the pelican, that self-devouring creature, prove so froward and untoward her vitals for to strain? And why the subtle fox, while in death's wounds is lying, doth not lament his pangs by howling and by crying? And why the milk-white swan doth sing when she's a-dying? Hallo, my fancy, whither wilt thou go? Fain would I conclude this, at least make essay what similitude is, why fowls of a feather flock and fly together, and lambs no beasts of prey, how nature's alchemists, these small laborious creatures, acknowledge still a prince in ordering their matters, and suffer none to live, who slothing lose their features. Hallo, my fancy, whither wilt thou go? I'm rapt with admiration when I do ruminate, men of an occupation, how each one calls him brother, yet each envieth other, and yet still intimate. Yea, I admire to see some natures farther sundered than antipodes to us. Is it not to be wondered? In myriads you'll find of one mind scarce 100. Hallo, my fancy, whither wilt thou go? What multitude of notions doth perturb my pate, considering the motions how the heavens are preserved, and this world served in moisture, light, and heat. If one spirit sits the outmost circle turning, or one turns another, continuing and journeying, if rapid circles' motion be that which they call burning, hallo, my fancy, whither wilt thou go? Fain also would I prove this, by considering what that which you call love is, whether it be a folly, or a melancholy, or some heroic thing. Fain I'd have it proved by one whom love hath wounded, and fully upon one his desire hath founded, whom nothing else could please, though the world were rounded. Hallo, my fancy, whither wilt thou go? To know this world's centre, height, depth, breadth, and length, fain would I adventure to search the hid attractions of magnetic actions and adamantine strength. Fain would I know, if in some lofty mountain, where the moon sojourns, if there be trees or fountain, if there be beasts of prey, or yet be fields to hunt in. Hallo, my fancy, whither wilt thou go? Fain would I have it tried by experiment, by none can be denied. If in this bulk of nature there be voids less or greater, or all remains complete. Fain would I know if beasts have any reason, if falcons killing eagles do commit a treason, if fear of winter's want makes swallows fly the season. Hallo, my fancy, whither wilt thou go? Hallo, my fancy, hallo, stay, stay at home with me. I can thee no longer follow, for thou hast betrayed me, and bewrayed me. It is too much for thee. Stay, stay at home with me, leave off thy lofty soaring. Stay thou at home with me, and on thy books be poring. For he that goes abroad lays little up in storing. Thou'rt welcome home, my fancy, welcome home to me. End of poem. This recording is in the public domain. Ideality by Hartley Coleridge, from the World's Best Poetry, Volume 6, Fancy and Sentiment, Part 1, read for LibriVox.org by Thomas Peter. Ideality. The vale of Tempe had in vain been fair. Green Ida never deemed the nurse of Jove. Each fabled stream, beneath its covered grove, had idly murmured to the idle air. The shaggy wolf had kept his horrid lair in Delphi's cell, and old Trophonius' cave, and the wild wailing of the Ionian wave had never blended with the sweet despair of Sappho's death song. If the sight inspired saw only what the visual organs show, if heaven-born fantasy no more required than what within the sphere of sense may grow, the beauty to perceive of earthly things, the mounting soul must heavenward prune her wings. End of poem. This recording is in the public domain.
Fancy by John Keats, from the World's Best Poetry, Volume 6, Fancy and Sentiment, Part 1, read for LibriVox.org by Jason in Panama. Fancy. Ever let the fancy roam, pleasure never is at home. At a touch sweet pleasure melteth, like to bubbles when rain pelteth. Then let winged fancy wander through the thoughts still spread beyond her. Open wide the mind's cage door, she'll dart forth and cloudward soar. O sweet fancy, let her loose, summer's joys are spoilt by use, and the enjoying of the spring fades as does its blossoming. Autumn's red-lipped fruitage too, blushing through the mist and dew, cloys with tasting. What do then? Sit thee by the ingle, when the sere fagot blazes bright, spirit of a winter's night, when the soundless earth is muffled, and the caked snow is shuffled from the ploughboy's heavy shoon, when the night doth meet the noon in a dark conspiracy to banish even from her sky. Sit thee there, and send abroad with a mind self overawed fancy, high commissioned. Send her. She has vassals to attend her. She will bring, in spite of frost, beauties that the earth hath lost. She will bring thee all together, all delights of summer weather, all the buds and bells of May, from dewy sward or thorny spray, all the heaped autumn's wealth, with a still mysterious stealth. She will mix these pleasures up like three fit wines in a cup, and thou shalt quaff it, thou shalt hear distant harvest carols clear, rustle of the reaped corn, sweet birds antheming the morn. And in the same moment, hark! 'Tis the early April lark, or the rooks with busy caw, foraging for sticks and straw. Thou shalt at one glance behold the daisy and the marigold, white plumed lilies, and the first hedge grown primrose that hath burst, shaded hyacinth, alway sapphire queen of the mid May, and every leaf and every flower pearled with the self same shower. Thou shalt see the field mouse peep meagre from its celled sleep, and the snake all winter thin cast on sunny bank its skin. Freckled nest eggs thou shalt see hatching in the hawthorn tree, when the hen bird's wing doth rest quiet on her mossy nest. Then the hurry and alarm when the beehive casts its swarm, acorns ripe down pattering while the autumn breezes sing. O sweet fancy, let her loose! Everything is spoilt by use. Where's the cheek that doth not fade, too much gazed at? Where's the maid whose lip mature is never new? Where's the eye, however blue, doth not weary? Where's the face one would meet in every place? Where's the voice, however soft, one would hear so very oft? At a touch sweet pleasure melteth like to bubbles when rain pelteth. Then let winged fancy find thee a mistress to thy mind, dulcet eyed as Ceres' daughter, ere the god of torment taught her how to frown and how to chide, with a waist and with a side white as Hebe's, when her zone split its golden clasp, and down fell her kirtle to her feet while she held the goblet sweet, and Jove grew languid. Break the mesh of the fancy's silken leash, quickly break her prison string, and such joys as these she'll bring. Let the winged fancy roam, pleasure never is at home. John Keats. End of poem. This recording is in the public domain. Imagination from A Midsummer Night's Dream, Act 5, Scene 2, by William Shakespeare. From the World's Best Poetry, Volume 6, Fancy and Sentiment, Part 1. Read for LibriVox.org by Jason in Panama. Imagination. The lunatic, the lover, and the poet are of imagination all compact. One sees more devils than vast hell can hold, that is, the madman. The lover, all as frantic, sees Helen's beauty in a brow of Egypt. The poet's eye, in a fine frenzy rolling, doth glance from heaven to earth, from earth to heaven. And as imagination bodies forth the forms of things unknown, the poet's pen turns them to shapes, and gives to airy nothing a local habitation and a name. Shakespeare. End of poem. This recording is in the public domain.
Queen Mab, from Romeo and Juliet, Act 1, Scene 4, by Shakespeare, from The World's Best Poetry, Volume 6, Fancy and Sentiment, Part 1, read for LibriVox.org by Leanne Yao. Queen Mab. Oh, then I see,
Queen Mab hath been with you. She is the fairies' midwife, and she comes in shape no bigger than an agate stone on the forefinger of an alderman, drawn with a team of little atomies athwart men's noses as they lie asleep. Her waggon spokes made of long spinner's legs, the cover of the wings of grasshoppers, the traces of the smallest spider's web, the colours of the moonshine's watery beams, her whip of cricket's bone, the lash of film, her waggoner a small grey-coated gnat, not half so big as a round little worm pricked from the lazy finger of a maid. Her chariot is an empty hazelnut, made by the joiner squirrel or old grub, time out of mind the fairies' coachmakers. And in this state she gallops night by night, through lovers' brains, and then they dream of love, on courtiers' knees, that dream on courtesies straight, o'er lawyers' fingers, who straight dream on fees, o'er ladies' lips, who straight on kisses dream, which oft the angry Mab with blisters plagues, because their breaths with sweetmeats tainted are. Sometimes she gallops o'er a courtier's nose, and then dreams he of smelling out a suit, and sometime comes she with the tithe pig's tail, tickling a parson's nose as it lies asleep. Then dreams he of another benefice. Sometime she driveth o'er a soldier's neck, and then dreams he of cutting foreign throats, of breeches, embuscados, Spanish blades, of healths 5 fathom deep, and then anon drums in his ear, at which he starts and wakes, and being thus frighted, swears a prayer or two, and sleeps again. This is that very Mab that plats the manes of horses in the night, and bakes the elf locks in foul sluttish hairs, which once untangled, much misfortune bodes. This is the hag, when maids lie on their backs, that presses them, and learns them first to bear, making them women of good carriage. End of poem. This recording is in the public domain.
Oberon's Feast by Robert Herrick. From the World's Best Poetry, Volume 6, Fancy and Sentiment, Part 1. Read for LibriVox.org by Craig Franklin. Oberon's Feast. Shapcot, to thee the fairy state I with discretion dedicate, because thou prizest things that are curious and unfamiliar. Take first the feast. These dishes gone, we'll see the fairy court anon. A little mushroom table spread, after short prayers they set on bread a moon-parched grain of purest wheat, with some small glittering grit to eat his choice bits with. Then in a trice they make a feast less great than nice. But all this while his eye is served, we must not think his ear was sterved, but that there was in place to stir his spleen, the cheering grasshopper, the merry cricket pulling fly, the piping gnat for minstrel's eye. And now we must imagine first the elves present to quench his thirst. A pure seed pearl of infant dew, brought and besweetened in a blue and pregnant violet, which done, his kittling eyes begin to run quite through the table, where he spies the horns of papery butterflies, of which he eats, and tastes a little of that we call the cuckoo spittle. A little fuzzball pudding stands by, yet not blessed by his hands. That was too coarse, but then forthwith he ventures boldly on the pith of sugared rush, and eats the sag, and well bestrutted bee's sweet bag, gladding his palate with some store of emmet's eggs. What would be more? But beards of mice, a newt's stewed thigh, a bloated earwig, and a fly, with the red-capped worm that's shut within the concave of a nut. Brown as his tooth, a little moth late fattened in a piece of cloth, with withered cherries, mandrake's ears, mole's eyes, to these the slain stag's tears, the unctuous dewlaps of a snail, the broke heart of a nightingale, o'ercoming music with a wine, ne'er ravished from the flattering vine, but gently pressed from the soft side of the most sweet and dainty bride, brought in a dainty daisy, which he fully quaffs up, to bewitch his blood to height. This done, commended, grace by his priest, the feast is ended. End of poem. This recording is in the public domain.
Fairy Song from A Midsummer Night's Dream, Act 2, Scene 1, by Shakespeare. From The World's Best Poetry, Volume 6, Fancy and Sentiment, Part 1. Read for LibriVox.org by Lian Yao. Fairy Song. Over hill, over dale, thorough brush, thorough briar, over park, over pale, thorough flood, thorough fire. I do wander everywhere, swifter than the moon's sphere, and I serve the fairy queen, to dew her orbs upon the green. The cowslips tall her pensioners be, in their gold coats, spots ye see. These be rubies, fairy favours, in those freckles live their savours. I must go seek some dewdrops here, and hang a pearl in every cowslip's ear. End of poem. This recording is in the public domain.
Compliment to Queen Elizabeth by William Shakespeare, from The World's Best Poetry, Volume 6, Fancy and Sentiment, Part 1. Read for LibriVox.org by Jason in Panama as Oberon,
And Craig Franklin as Puck.
Compliment to Queen Elizabeth, from A Midsummer Night's Dream, Act 2, Scene 2. My gentle Puck, come hither. Thou rememberest since once I sat upon a promontory, and heard a mermaid, on a dolphin's back, uttering such dulcet and harmonious breath, that the rude sea grew civil at her song, and certain stars shot madly from their spheres to hear the sea maid's music.
I remember.
That very time I saw, but thou couldst not, flying between the cold moon and the earth, Cupid all armed. A certain aim he took at a fair vestal throned by the west, and loosed his love shaft smartly from his bow, as it should pierce 100,000 hearts. But I might see young Cupid's fiery shaft quenched in the chaste beams of the watery moon, and the imperial votaress passed on, in maiden meditation, fancy free. Yet marked I where the bolt of Cupid fell. It fell upon a little western flower before milk white, now purple with love's wound, and maidens call it love in idleness. Fetch me that flower. End of poem. This recording is in the public domain. The Fairy's Lullaby by William Shakespeare, from The World's Best Poetry, Volume 6, Fancy and Sentiment, Part 1. Read for LibriVox.org by Jason in Panama as the narrator,
Sonia as Titania,
Thomas Peter as the first fairy,
Craig Franklin as the chorus.
And Lian Yao as the second fairy.
The Fairy's Lullaby, from A Midsummer Night's Dream, Act 2, Scene 3. Enter Titania with her train.
Come, now a roundel, and a fairy song, then, for the third part of a minute, hence. Some to kill cankers in the musk rose buds, some war with Weir mice for their leathern wings, to make my small elves coats, and some keep back the clamorous owl, that nightly hoots and wonders at our quaint spirits. Sing me now asleep, then to your offices, and let me rest.
Song.
You spotted snakes with double tongue, thorny hedgehogs be not seen, newts and blind worms do no wrong, come not near our fairy queen.
Philomel with melody, singing our sweet lullaby. La 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 lullaby, la 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 lullaby. Never harm, nor spell, nor charm, come our lovely lady nigh. So good night with lullaby.
Weaving spiders, come not here, hence, you long-legged spinners, hence. Beetles black, approach not near, worm nor snail do no offence.
Philomel with melody, singing our sweet lullaby. La 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 lullaby, la 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 lullaby. Never harm, nor spell, nor charm, come our lovely lady nigh. So good night with lullaby.
Hence away, now all is well. One aloof, stand sentinel.
Exeunt Fairies. Titania sleeps. End of poem. This recording is in the public domain. Fairies' Song by Thomas Randolph. Translated from Latin by Leigh Hunt. From The World's Best Poetry, Volume 6, Fancy and Sentiment, Part 1. Read for LibriVox.org by Jason in Panama. Fairies' Song. We the fairies blithe and antic, of dimensions not gigantic, though the moonshine mostly keep us, oft in orchards frisk and peep us. Stolen sweets are always sweeter, stolen kisses much completer, stolen looks are nice in chapels, stolen, stolen be your apples. When to bed the world are bobbing, then's the time for orchard robbing, yet the fruit were scarce worth peeling, were it not for stealing. From the Latin of Thomas Rudolph, translation of Leigh Hunt. End of poem. This recording is in the public domain.
The Fairies by William Allingham. From The World's Best Poetry, Volume 6, Fancy and Sentiment, Part 1. Read for LibriVox.org by Thomas Peter. The Fairies. Up the airy mountain, down the rushy glen, we daren't go a-hunting for fear of little men. We folk, good folk, trooping all together, green jacket, red cap, and white owl's feather. Down along the rocky shore some make their home, they live on crispy pancakes of yellow tide foam. Some in the reeds of the black mountain lake, with frogs for their watchdogs all night awake. High on the hill-top the old king sits, he is now so old and grey he's nigh lost his wits. With a bridge of white mist Columkill he crosses, on his stately journeys from Sleevely to Ross's, or going up with music on cold starry nights, to sup with the queen of the gay northern lights. They stole little Bridget for 7 years long, when she came down again her friends were all gone. They took her lightly back between the night and morrow, they thought that she was fast asleep, but she was dead with sorrow. They have kept her ever since, deep within the lakes, on a bed of flag leaves, watching till she wakes. By the craggy hillside, through the mosses bare, They have planted thorn trees for pleasure here and there. Is any man so daring to dig one up in spite? He shall find the thorny set in his bed at night. Up the airy mountain, down the rushy glen, we daren't go a-hunting for fear of little men. We folk, good folk, trooping all together, green jacket, red cap, and white owl's feather. End of poem. This recording is in the public domain.
Kilmeny by James Hogg, from The World's Best Poetry, Volume 6, Fancy and Sentiment, Part 1. Read for LibriVox.org by Craig Franklin as the narrator,
Sonia as the parent,
Lian Yao as the first fairy.
Thomas Peter as the second fairy.
and Jason in Panama as the third fairy.
Kilmeny, from The Queen's Wake. Bonny Kilmeny gaed up the glen, but it wasna to meet Dunera's men, nor the rosy monk of the isle to see, for Kilmeny was pure as pure could be. It was only to hear the yulin sing, and put a cress flower round the spring, the scarlet hip and the hinberry, and the nut that hung frae the hazel tree. For Kilmeny was pure as pure could be. But lang may her minnie look ere the wa, and lang may she seek i' the green wood shaw. Lang the laird of Dunera blame, and lang, lang greet, O Kilmeny come hame. When many a day had come and fled, when grief grew calm and hope was dead, when mass for Kilmeny's soul had been sung, when the bedesman had prayed and the dead bell rung, late, late in gloaming, when all was still, when the fringe was red on the westling hill, the wood was sere, the moon i' the wane, the reek o' the cot hung o'er the plain, like a little wee cloud in the world it's lain, when the ingle lowed with an airy leam, late, late in the gloaming Kilmeny came hame.
Kilmeny, Kilmeny, where have you been? Long have we sought baith hold and den, by linn, by ford, and greenwood tree, yet you are halesome and fair to see. Where got you the jaup of the lily sheen, that bonny snoot of the birks sae green, and these roses, the fairest that ever was seen? Kilmeny, Kilmeny, where have you been?
Kilmeny looked up with a lovely grace, but nae smile was seen on Kilmeny's face. As still was her look, and as still was her ee, as the stillness that lay on the emerald lea, or the mist that sleeps on a waveless sea. For Kilmeny had been she knew not where, and Kilmeny had seen what she could not declare. Kilmeny had been where the cock never crew, where the rain never fell and the wind never blew. But it seemed as the harp of the sky had rung, and the airs of heaven played round her tongue, when she spake of the lovely form she had seen, and a land where sin had never been, a land of love and a land of light, withouten sun or moon or night, where the river swayed a living stream, and the light a pure celestial beam, the land of vision, it would seem, a still and everlasting dream. In yon green wood there is a wake, and in the wake there is a wean, and in that wean there is a make, that neither has flesh, blood, nor bane. And down in yon greenwood he walks his lane. In that green wean Kilmeny lay, her bosom happed with the flowrets gay, but the air was soft and the silence deep, and bonny Kilmeny fell sound asleep. She kenned nae mair nor opened her ee, till waked by the hymns of the fair country. She wakened on a couch of the silk sae slim, all stripped with the bars of the rainbow's rim, and lovely beings around were rife, who erst had travelled mortal life, and aye they smiled and gan to speer.
What spirit has brought this mortal here?
Lang have I journeyed the world wide.
A meek and reverent Fearer replied,
Both night and day I have watched the fair errant 1,000 years and mair. Yes, I have watched o'er ilk degree, wherever blooms femininity. But sinless virgin, free of stain, in mind and body fanned I nane. Never since the banquet of time found I a virgin in her prime, till late this bonny maiden I saw, as spotless as the morning snow. Full 20 years she has lived as free as the spirits that sojourn in this country. I've brought her away frae the snares of men, that sin or death she may never ken.
They clasped her waist, her hands sae fair, they kissed her cheek and they kenned her hair, and round came many a blooming fair, saying,
Bonny Kilmeny, ye are welcome here. Women are freed of the Lytton scorn. Oh, blessed be the day Kilmeny was born. Now shall the land of the spirit see, now shall it ken what women may be. Many a lang year in sorrow and pain, many a lang year through the world we've gane, commissioned to watch fair womankind, for it's they who nourish the immortal mind. We have watched their steps as the dawning shone, and deep in the greenwood walks alone. By lily bower and silken bed, the viewless tears have o'er them shed, have soothed their ardent minds to sleep, or left the couch of love to weep. We have seen, but the time must come, and the angels will weep at the day of doom. Oh, with the fairest of mortal kind, I keep the holy truths in mind, that kindred spirits their motions see, who watch their ways with anxious ee, and grieve for the guilt of humanity. Oh, sweet to heaven the maiden's prayer, and the sigh that heaves a bosom so fair, and dear to heaven the words of truth, and the praise of virtue fro beauty's mouth, and dear to the viewless forms of air, the minds that kithe as the body fair. O bonny Kilmeny, free frae stain, if ever you seek the world again, that world of sin, of sorrow and fear, O tell of the joys that are waiting here, and tell of the signs you shall shortly see, of the times that are now, and the times that shall be.
They lifted Kilmeny, they led her away, and she walked in the light of a sunless clay. The sky was a dome of crystal bright, the fountain of vision, a fountain of light. The emerald fields were of dazzling glow, and the flowers of everlasting blow. Then deep in the stream her body they laid, that her youth and beauty never might fade. And they smiled on heaven when they saw her lie in the stream of life that wandered by. And she heard a song, she heard it sung, she kenned not where, but sae sweetly it rung. It fell on her ear like a dream of the morn.
O blessed be the day Kilmeny was born! Now shall the land of the spirits see, now shall it ken what a woman may be. The sun that shines on the world sae bright, a borrowed gade frae the fountain of light, and the moon that sleeks the sky sae dun, like a gowden bow, or a beamless sun, shall wear away and be seen nae mair, and the angels shall miss them travelling the air. But lang, lang after baith night and day, when the sun and the world have died away, when the sinner has gane to his waesome doom, Kilmeny shall smile in eternal bloom.
They bore her away, she wist not how, for she felt not arm nor rest below, but so swiftly they waned her through the light, 'twas like the motion of a sound or sight. They seemed to split the gales of air, and yet no gale nor breeze was there. Unnumbered groves below them grew, they came, they passed, and backward flew, like floods of blossoms gliding on, in moment seen, in moment gone. Oh, never vales to mortal view appeared like those o'er which they flew, that land to human spirits given, that lowermost vales of the storied heaven, from whence they can view the whole world below, and heaven's blue gates with sapphires glow, more glory yet unmeet to know. They bore her far to a mountain green, to see what mortal never had seen, and they seated her high on a purple sward, and bade her heed what she saw and heard, and note the changes the spirits wrought. For now she lived in the land of thought. She looked, and she saw nor sun nor skies, but a crystal dome of 1,000 dyes. She looked, and she saw nae land or right, but an endless whirl of glory and light. And radiant beings went and came, far swifter than wind or the linked flame. She hid her een frae the dazzling view. She looked again, and the scene was new. She saw on the sun on a mountain sky, and the clouds of amber sailing by, a lovely land beneath her lay. And that land had glens and mountains grey, and that land had valleys and hoary piles, and marled seas and 1,000 isles. Its fields were speckled, its forests green, and its lakes were all of the dazzling sheen. Like magic mirrors where slumbering lay the sun and the sky and the cloudlet grey, which heaved and trembled and gently swung. On every shore they seemed to be hung, for there they were seen on their downward plain 1,000 times and 1,000 again, in winding lake and placid firth, little peaceful heavens in the bosom of earth. Kilmeny sighed and seemed to grieve, for she found her heart to that land did cleave. She saw the corn wave on the vale, she saw the deer run down the dale, she saw the plaid and the broad claymore, and the brows that the badge of freedom bore, and she thought she had seen the land before. She saw a lady sit on a throne, the fairest that ever the sun shone on. A lion licked her hand of milk, and she held him in a leash of silk. And a leafy maiden stood at her knee, with a silver wand and a melting ee, her sovereign shield, till love stole in and poisoned all the fount within. Then a gruff untoward beadsman came, and hunted the lion on his dame, and the guardian maid with a dauntless ee, she dropped a tear and left her knee. And she saw till the queen frae the lion fled, till the bonniest flower of the world lay dead. A coffin was set on a distant plain, and she saw the red blood fall like rain. Then bonny Kilmeny's heart grew sair, and she turned away and could look nae mair. Then the gruff grim carle gained the main, and they trampled him down, but he rose again, and he baited the lion to deeds of weir, till he lapped the blood to the kingdom dear. And weening his head was danger prief, when crowned with a rose and the clover leaf, he growled at the carle and chased him away to feed with the deer on the mountain grey. He growled at the carle and he gecked at heaven, but his mark was set and his hours given. Kilmeny a while her een withdrew. She looked again, and the scene was new. She saw below her fair unfurled one half of all the glowing world, where oceans rolled and rivers ran to bound the arms of sinful man. She saw a people fierce and fell burst frae their bounds like fiends of hell. Their lilies grew and the eagles flew, and she hirked on her ravening crew, till the cities and towers were wrapped in a blaze, and the thunder it roared o'er the lands and the seas. The widows they wailed, and the red blood ran, and she threatened an end to the race of man. She never leaned nor stood in awe, till caught by the lion's deadly paw. Oh, then the eagle swinking for life, and brainselled up a mortal strife. But flew she north or flew she south, she met with the growl of the lion's mouth. With a mooted wing and waefu mane, the eagle sought her eyrie again. But lang may she cower in her bloody nest, and lang, lang sleek her wounded breast, before she say another flight, to play with the Nolan's lion's might. But to sing, the sights Kilmeny saw, so far surpassing nature's law, the singer's voice would sink away, and the string of his harp would cease to play. But she saw, till the sorrows of man were by, and all was love and harmony, till the stars of heaven fell calmly away, like the flakes of snow on a winter's day. Then Kilmeny begged again to see the friends she had left in her own country, to tell the place where she had been, and the glories that lay in the land unseen, to warn the living maidens fair, the loved of heaven, the spirit's care, that all whose minds and mild remain shall bloom in beauty when time is gane. with distant music, soft and deep. They lulled Kilmeny sound asleep, and when she awakened, she lay her lane, all happed with flowers in the green wood wain. When 7 long years had come and fled, when grief was calm and hope was dead, when scarce was remembered Kilmeny's name, late, late in gloaming, Kilmeny came hame. Ah no, her beauty was fair to see, but still and steadfast was her ee. Such beauty baird may never declare, for there was no pride, no passion there, and the soft desire of maidens e'en in that mild face could never be seen. Her seymur was the lily flower, and her cheek the moss rose in the shower, and her voice like the distant melody that floats along the twilight sea. But she loved to rake the lanely glen, and keep afar frae the haunts of men, her holy hymns unheard to sing, to suck the flowers and drink the spring. But wherever her peaceful form appeared, the wild beasts of the hill were cheered. The wolf played blithely round the field, the lordly bison lowed and kneeled, the dun deer wooed with manner bland, and cowered aneath her lily hand. And when at even the woodlands rung, when hymns of other worlds she sung, in ecstasy of sweet devotion, oh, then the glen was all emotion. The wild beasts of the forest came, broke from their buttes and folds the tame, and goved around, charmed and amazed. Even the dull cattle crooned and gazed, and murmured and looked with anxious pain for something the mystery to explain. The buzzard came with a throstle cock, the corby left her hoof in the rock, the blackbird along with the eagle flew, the hind came tripping o'er the dew, the wolf and the kid their rake began, and the tod and the lamb and the leveret ran, the hawk and the hern to them hung, and the merle and the mavis forhooed their young, and all in a peaceful ring were hurled. It was like an eve in a sinless world. When a month and day had come and gane, Kilmeny saw the greenwood wane. There laid her down on the leaves sae green, and Kilmeny on earth was never mair seen. But all the words that fell from her mouth were words of wonder and words of truth. But all the lands were in fear and dread, for they kenned nae whether she was living or dead. It wasna her hame, and she couldna remain. She left this world of sorrow and pain, and returned to the land of thought again. End of poem. This recording is in the public domain.
The Fairy Child by John Anster, from the World's Best Poetry, Volume 6, Fancy and Sentiment, Part 1, read for LibriVox.org by Jason in Panama. The Fairy Child. The summer sun was sinking with a mild light, calm and mellow. It shone on my little boy's bonny cheeks, and his loose locks of yellow. The robin was singing sweetly, and his song was sad and tender, and my little boy's eyes, while he heard the song, smiled with a sweet soft splendor. My little boy lay down on my bosom while his soul the song was quaffing. The joy of his soul had tinged his cheek, and his heart and his eye were laughing. I sate alone in my cottage, the midnight needle plying. I feared for my child, for the rush's light in the socket now was dying. There came a hand to my lonely latch, like the wind at midnight moaning. I knelt to pray, but rose again, for I heard my little boy groaning. I crossed my brow and I crossed my breast, but that night my child departed. They left a weakling in his stead, and I am broken hearted. Oh, it cannot be my own sweet boy, for his eyes are dim and hollow. My little boy is gone, and his mother soon will follow. The dirge for the dead will be sung for me, and the mass be chanted meetly, and I shall sleep with my little boy in the moonlight churchyard sweetly. John Anster. End of poem. This recording is in the public domain. Garden Fairies by Philip Bourke Marston from The World's Best Poetry, Volume 6, Fancy and Sentiment, Part 1. Read for LibriVox.org by Jason in Panama as the narrator,
Sonia as the lilies,
and Lian Yao as the roses.
Garden Fairies. Keen was the air, the sky was very light, soft with shed snow my garden was, and white, and, walking there, I heard upon the night sudden sound of little voices, just the prettiest of noises. It was the strangest, subtlest, sweetest sound. It seemed above me, seemed upon the ground, then swiftly seemed to eddy round and round, till I said, "To-night the air is surely full of garden fairies." And all at once it seemed I grew aware that little, shining presences were there. White shapes and red shapes danced upon the air, then a peal of silver laughter, and such singing followed after as none of you, I think, have heard. More soft it was than call of any bird, note after note exquisitely deferred, soft as dewdrops when they settle in a fair flower's open petal. What are these fairies? To myself I said. For answer then, as from a garden's bed, on the cold air a sudden scent was shed, scent of lilies, scent of roses, scent of summer's sweetest posies. And said a small sweet voice within my ear,
we flowers that sleep through winter once a year are by our flower queen sent to visit here. That this fact may duly flout us, gardens can look fair without us. A very little time we have to play, then must we go, oh, very far away, and sleep again for many a long, long day, till the glad birds sing above us, and the warm sun comes to love us. Hark what the roses sing now as we go.
then very sweet and soft, and very low, a dream of sound across the garden snow, came the chime of roses singing to the lily bell's faint ringing. Rose's Song.
Softly sinking through the snow, to our winter rest we go, underneath the snow to house, till the birds be in the boughs, and the boughs with leaves be fair, and the sun shine everywhere. Softly through the snow we settle, little snowdrops press each petal. Oh, the snow is kind and white, soft it is, and very light. Soon we shall be where no light is, but where sleep is, and where night is. Sleep of every wind unshaken, till our summer bids us waken.
Then toward some far off goal that singing drew, then altogether ceased. More steely blue the blue stars shone, but in my spirit grew hope of summer, love of roses, certainty that sorrow closes. End of poem. This recording is in the public domain.